Nikon Z FC Review. The Nikon Z FC is the company's second mirrorless camera with an APS-C crop sensor, after the Nikon Z 50. Under the hood, the two cameras are virtually identical, but it's clear from the outside that the shooting experience is altogether different. Much of this review, therefore, focuses on the new design of the Nikon Z FC. The current Nikon Z lineup now consists of two APS-C cameras, two second-generation full-frame models, the Nikon Z 6 II and Nikon Z 7 II, plus the Nikon Z 5. The native lens lineup is much more developed for full-frame, with 17 lenses to the two dedicated APS-C zoom kit lenses. However, the new Z28mm f/2.8 SE lens launched alongside the Nikon Z FC that we had during this test is an aesthetic pairing and a compelling 42mm f/2.8 equivalent lens. This could be anything from the competitive price, the smaller sensor format compared to full frame, the vari-angle screen, the modest single UHS SD card slot, or the lack of weather sealing. The camera it's inspired by, the Nikon FM2, was a serious full-frame workhorse that could take a bullet for you, with a mechanical shutter able to rattle off frames with no battery power. It's a camera that lasts, while the Nikon Z FC is aimed at an altogether different photographer. Still, the Z FC is a beautiful, casual camera with a capable specification, 20.9MP sensor, 4K video up to 30 FPS, continuous tracking AF for people, animals, faces and eyes, and an inspired vari-angle touchscreen. The Z FC is the affordable option too. If you want a digital camera with ISO, shutter speed and exposure compensation dials, you're looking at the twice the price Fujifilm X-T4, or if you can live without the ISO dial, then the Fujifilm X-T32 enters the frame. The Nikon Z FC is available to buy in a variety of bundles. If you just want to buy the camera body only, it'll cost $959, £899, £1,499 Australian dollars, but you can also buy it with different lenses, or in a lens kit with both wide-angle and telephoto zooms. The ideal kit for street photographers will likely be the Nikon Z FC with the new Nikon Z 28mm f/2.8 SE prime lens, which together will cost $1,199, £1,129, £1,899 Australian dollars. If you'd rather go for the Z FC with the Nikon Z DX 16 to 50mm f/3.5 to 6.3 VR lens, that kit will set you back $1,099, £1,039, £1,699 Australian dollars. You don't have to be a fan of the Nikon FM2 to appreciate the design of the Nikon Z FC. We remember the Nikon FM2 well, an aspirational camera for enthusiasts, and the attention to detail in reimagining the FM2 for today is painstakingly admirable. From the front, it's virtually the same dimensions as the FM2, meaning this is one dinky camera, barely a handful. Its form factor, design cues, everything sings FM2. The view from the top is equally impressive. While thinner than the FM2, it still packs exposure dials for ISO, shutter speed and exposure compensation dial. We love the tiny window with an LCD display of the current aperture setting. Nikon has gone most of the way there, but wait, the lenses. A new Nikon Z 28mm f/2.8 SE lens was launched alongside the Z FC, and like the camera it certainly looks the retro part. But why is there no aperture control ring on this special edition full-frame lens? With that full complement of exposure dials on the camera's top plate, we sorely missed an aperture control ring on the lens, and you won't find one on any other Nikon Z lens. You can change the sole control ring on the 28mm lens from focus to aperture, but you can't have both at the same time. Otherwise, you shift aperture by using the camera's front command dial, but it's not nearly as intuitive as on the lens, especially when you're already shifting the shutter speed dial with those same right-hand fingers. In understanding those exposure dials, the built-in program mode switch that includes auto, the implementation of in-camera auto ISO, you can get the exposure effect you want super quick. By the way, in-camera auto ISO handles a charm just like high-end Nikon cameras, meaning minimum acceptable shutter speed can be manually selected. Elsewhere, the Z FC's flip touchscreen that's on hand for selfie shooters and bloggers is totally the right call here, but for additional reasons. This type of screen can be folded away completely, revealing a protective dappled leather finish instead. You can pretend it's screenless in a way that's not possible with fixed or tilt screens. We're not quite in Fujifilm X Pro 3 territory, a camera that simulates a loaded film roll on its rear, but the look is spot on. With a circular eye-cup design for the EVF, electronic viewfinder, the look from the rear is complete. The EVF is a reasonably large display with a feature set and performance that is competitive at this price point, 2.36 million dots and a refresh rate of 60 fps. You'll have to press your eye in right up close to get a clear view though. You get touch focus with subject tracking, shutter response, full menu navigation and playback control. This is how touchscreens are meant to be. And the footprint of the touchscreen is minimal, adding very little to the overall size of the Z FC. Around the exposure dials are little hints that this is a camera for today. The shutter speed dial has a switch to shift from shooting stills to video. The Nikon DF couldn't shoot video at all, a philosophical choice. Sadly, the in-camera menu remains the same whether you are shooting photos or video. Separate custom menus would be welcome for photo and video to make navigating your options much simpler. From our time with the Z FC, we found battery life par for the course, getting a full day of moderate use that this camera is technically designed for. However, it is now possible to charge the camera on the go via the USB-C input. Speaking of inputs, there is a 3.5mm microphone port, plus mini HMDI. Elsewhere, what you get with the mirrorless tech is an option for a silent shutter. Paired with a flip screen for subtle waist level viewing, the Z FC represents an unobtrusive shooter ideal for travel and street photography. Faced up to the similarly priced Nikon Z 50, we prefer the Z FC design. There's the vari-angle screen and USB-C charging, plus exposure compensation is operational when in auto exposure mode. Startup time is brisk, with the camera able to shoot within a second of powering up. Z-series lenses focus quickly and quietly for general scenes, offering a manual focus override, too. There's on-screen touch tracking autofocus that is sticky on your subject, and the Z FC detects faces and eyes with a reasonable speed, accuracy and reliability. With the viewfinder in play, you can hit the OK button to bring up a manual AF selection area, too, though you cannot swipe the open touchscreen for autofocus area selection. With the same 20.9 million pixel APS-C sensor as the Nikon Z 50, we can expect the same image quality from the Nikon Z FC. And aside from a few handling tweaks that may impact the shots you are getting, like the at-hand exposure compensation dial, things are indeed the same, which is no bad thing. The 20.9 MP sensor has a great handle on noise, with all settings up to ISO 6400 looking clean, especially those under ISO 800. It's a general rule of thumb to avoid the top two ISO settings if you want to avoid the adverse impact of noise, in this case ISO 25600 and ISO 51200. Dynamic range impresses and the implementation of a HDR mode is simple and effective. There's a host of auto white balance, AWB, options, with the possibility of maintaining warm tones as one option. Colors in general look great from the off, though dominant colors in a scene can impact the temperature and hue in other colors. For example, a dominant blue can make skin tones look a little yellow, or a green vista results in overly magenta elsewhere, and so on. The standard color profile gives a refreshing subtle degree of saturation more akin to a neutral color profile in other systems. In-camera RAW editing enables adjustments to exposure plus or minus 2 ev, white balance, color profile and picture mode among others.